Legislative and Human Resources.
Good morning. We will call the Legislative and Human Resource Committee meeting to order. First item on our agenda is public comment. If there's anyone besides DeAndre that would like to address the LHR committee.
How you doing, everybody? My name is DeAndre Jones. I'm actually pretty excited to hear a presentation on technology. I was at an event for human resource. I was seeing Commissioner Tony Baker, and I connected with that organization because they help people get jobs. And they people of all ethnicities and backgrounds get jobs. And as I look to be an innovative business leader here, I forward to that presentation. But I'd like to speak about my esports competition. So just recently, the National Guard reached out to me. They want to partner with me on this esports competition. State police will be there potentially. I connected with a state trooper as I was at GVSU's job there.
Thanks, DeAndre. I just want to be able to fly in the jet someday with you.
You will.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the board? All right, seeing no one, I need a motion and support for last meeting's minutes. Do I have a motion for approval? I have a motion from, I heard a support. Motion by Atil, support by LeGrand. Any comments or questions or changes? All right, this is just a simple yes or no. All those in favor say yes. Yes. All those in favor, all those against? Last meeting's minutes have been approved. Information technology performance measure review. Tim, if you would.
Morning, Commissioners. Years now, so I must say, getting started, I don't believe I've ever done a performance measurements presentation and had a comment that people from the public were looking forward to it. So, thank you, DeAndre. That sets the stage, generates a little excitement. So, my goal this morning is to be brief but thorough in my comments, and IT is one of those departments that doesn't routinely come in front of the board. But having said that, I do appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on what we're up to and what we're scheming. So, my goal is to be brief but thorough. So, We're off like a herd of turtles this morning. All right, presentation overview, we're going to skip that. It's just the kind of where we're headed today. Mission and alignment. So IT, we provide technology services to various county departments, a couple of other local municipalities, and things of that nature. So we slide in nicely to excellence in service delivery. That's what we do. I think depending on what we do, we are one of those few departments that does stitch other county departments together. And when you talk about things like some of our participation in the broadband subcommittee and those types of things, we wander into other areas of the board's strategic goals and priorities. But on a day-to-day, we live right in service delivery. That's our core. So how do we do that? We've got a number of functional areas, 6 functional areas, and all of them have their own corresponding mission statements. When we simplify that, when we distill that down, the strategic goal is there. We are trying to get the right people access to the right data. We want to do that securely, we want to do it easily, and we want to do that on devices that we know about. Your new laptops are a perfect example of that, right? So that's kind of what we do. Sort of an all-encompassing statement. I think sometimes in IT we are guilty of overcomplicating things, and so we'll talk a little bit about perfection being the enemy of good enough, but strategically, that's what we're trying to do. All right, so the next slide here is really just a overview, kind of a flyby, if you will, by way of introduction, trying to illustrate a little bit of the scale of the things we do. So you've got a super secret picture of a data center there. But across the board, we've got IT folks, 38 individuals in IT across 6 functional teams, an average tenure of 15 years for those folks, so we're a well-seasoned crew. Across the county, we support 2,300 devices, computers. So that's a pretty good number. And then when you talk within our data centers, on-site, we support 320-ish. I always like the ish, right? Essentially correct numbers. But 320 servers in our data centers, heavily virtualized, meaning we don't physically have 320 servers. We've got 15% of those are physical, the rest are virtual, meaning they live, it's a many-to-one type of arrangement. So it's a pretty good footprint in our data centers. We support 346 network devices. Those are things that connect other things, routers, switches, wireless access points, those types of things across the county. External connections, 52 of those. Those are not connections to county buildings or facilities. Those are connections to other municipalities, state and federal resources, internet connectivity, connections going outside the county. And then 452 databases supporting general county operations on a day-to-day basis. We'll talk a little bit more about OnBase later on, but OnBase is our document management system, and so when the county is going paperless initiatives, workflow automation, those types of things, we talk a lot about OnBase, which is our platform for doing that. And one of the interesting things we look at is how many documents reside in OnBase. So you kind of got the count there in front of you. We usually see pretty good growth. From 21 to 22, we saw not as great of a growth, but we also implemented document retention, right? So we reduced the number of documents that live in OnBase because we purged things that reached the end of life, contracts, things like that. So we got to change that measurement. It's still an interesting number, but because of document retention, it becomes less interesting, I guess. So. And then the last couple of points there, we talk a little bit about compression. We store petabytes of data in our data centers. We are stewards of a whole lot of data, and it forces us to do things creatively to compress them so we can store them efficiently, cost effectively, and we can recover them easily. And so those, if you're an IT geek, those might be interesting numbers to you. The bottom one, though, is interesting from a recoverability standpoint. We're going to talk more about IT security later on, but for most of our garden variety business documents, we can go back, pick a time over the last 12 months, pick a month, a date, and a time, and we can get that data back for you. So we are proud of that. We also live under various other document and regulatory requirements for preserving data as it relates to various departments. But for your garden variety, day-to-day Excel spreadsheets, things of that nature, we can get it back. So, all right, so that's a little about the numbers. I won't spend a ton of time here on key performance metrics, but I will touch on them a little bit. You've got your report in front of you, and I'm happy to answer questions there. But again, talking about interesting numbers a little bit, we try to maintain average server availability above 99% for systems we support on-site in our data centers. Consistently, we see 3 nines, which is considerable. And when you look at really the bottom two bullet points there, we measure downtime, unplanned downtime, not in hours, but in minutes per month. So we're consistently above that metric. That one, again, becomes a little bit less interesting when we look at cloud services, where we email our financial management system. Those things are cloud-based, and they're governed by their own respective contracts, so they're not on site, so they don't fall under this measurement. But again, we're proud of the work we do for systems that we maintain. The service desk, our service desk is the first line of support. So you call 6600, you send an email to IT service desk and say, hey, my computer broke and I need some help, I need my voicemail password reset, whatever it might be. Call that number and they help you out. So we've got an SLA, we publish SLAs that say we're gonna respond in this much time, we're gonna resolve your issue in this much time. And we try to hit that 90% of the time, and pretty consistently we're at 88% of the time. And this is always a difficult one because we have a hard time breaking that 88% mark. But when you look again at the bottom bullet there, it is staggering how many support requests we get. We get almost 1,300 a month, and that's pretty consistent year over year. So across the county, we're getting 1,300 requests per month for various things, various levels of complexity. Again, I don't look at the 88% as much as I look at our ability to absorb and digest that amount of work and respond accordingly. So, IT security, we're going to talk a lot about IT security in a couple slides here, but one of the interesting metrics we watch for IT security is email phishing prone. So anybody with a kentcountymI.gov email address gets tested by our security awareness platform. And so they get sent messages. And really the idea is how likely are county staff to click on a message that contains malicious content or is requesting password credentials, something else. Industry best average says 7%. Pretty consistently, we've been going down. Last year, we were at 4%. The interesting thing about our platform, though, is it's behavior-based, so it learns. So if it knows that I tend to click on things about free food in the break room, well, it's gonna test me more, right? So, and that is number one in the county, by the way. But so it's behavior based. So as you get better, it changes the focus to test something else. And so we expect that might tick up a little bit as we continue to investigate that or roll out a little bit more scrutiny across the environment. So, and you've all got email addresses, so welcome to the party. All right. The last metric here is just our website. And one of the metrics we watch is unique visitors, which is how many new people are coming to the website, Access Kent. And if you look for this year, it looks like we trend down to 4.3 million, but the reality is 2020 and 2021, that dramatic jump in website visitors was the result of COVID. And the fact that the county stood up websites, Vaccinate West Michigan and Back to Work, where there were resources available that really drove the number up. If you take those numbers out and you compare 2019 to 2022, which is really more of a, let's call it a non-COVID comparison, we're up considerably. I don't have the percentage, 15%. In IT, we never do math in front of people, but it looks like about 15%. And again, it's pretty consistent. So more and more people are choosing to do business with us online. You see that down below. Mobile device traffic is up from 53% last year to 57. More people are doing business with us on tablets and mobile devices, and largely accountable to the various improvements we continue to make to online payment services and options available for folks. All right, talking about IT security for a minute. So I want to spend a few minutes on this slide because we talked about Know before, and that's kind of one of the more forward-facing things we do. But I wanted to make sure that I took a few minutes to just educate on what we do because it's a lot bigger than just that. It's interesting to note that everybody is now interested in IT security. Historically, the ratings agencies that the county depends on for our AAA bond rating are insurance renewals. Nobody historically really cared about IT security, but starting a couple of years ago, they started to poke at it. And now they really are, right? They're looking for supporting memos from us that says, here's what you're doing, here's what you're improving, and they compare it year over year. Here's what you did last year, here's what you said you did last year. And that is in addition to a lot of the ongoing regulatory things we operate under as we support the Sheriff's Department and courts and things like that. they're always audit. There's an audit going on someplace across the county all the time, and that makes us better as an IT organization when it comes to security and protecting data. But it is interesting that other people are now really looking at this stuff. So there's more pressure, but we become better. Continued expansion of the security landscape. It's interesting. I read a metric the other day that ransomware is down 23% for small and medium business. So, hey, thumbs up. But it's really thumbs down. They're just looking for other ways to get in, right? So our email security awareness, that type of training is working. People are more vigilant about what they click on, right? So they just have to find another threat surface, another threat vector to get in. So they're now looking at industrial control systems, camera systems, door control systems, those types of things, which historically have not been a vector for us, but we use. So it really changes our focus a little bit to figure out how we're going to support security needs in those areas. On an annual basis, we go through a penetration test process by which we hire an outside third-party agency to try to get in from the outside our network. And then we assume if they did get in, what could they get access to? And this is a pretty organized group. They do social engineering, they use phone calls, they have dropped USB drives in parking lots trying to get people to plug things in. They're pretty holistic in how they try to extract data out of the county. And that's an annual thing we do, and then we remediate, we meet with them, and so it's just kind of an ongoing cadence. And we've always done very well, but we look forward to that. I shouldn't say we look forward to it. We tolerate that on an annual basis, but it's something we need to do. Upgraded endpoint protection, this is something, we have 23 devices out there now, and they are the edge device. It used to be that you came to work, you sat in your cubicle, and you used your desktop computer. We now have 2,300 computers, the majority of which are laptops, being used on home wireless networks, in coffee shops, wherever. Those are now the edge devices. And so looking at how do we protect those, we're using a platform called Carbon Black, which is next generation for antivirus. It's behavior-based. It learns what you do. It learns how your laptop behaves. And that is totally different for us. And so it will know, hey, you always use it in this location on this Comcast wireless network. Looks pretty good. The minute you take that to a coffee shop, behavior is different. It starts to behave a little bit differently in terms of scrutinizing what you do. It's called enhanced endpoint protection, and we like that. It also traces movement. It knows, for example, that I don't routinely talk to somebody at FOC. Why am I doing that today? Why is my computer trying to reach out to a computer out there? It watches stuff like that, and then it reports it. So that's exciting to us. We gather a ton of interesting data and makes us better. Security awareness program, we talked about that a little bit with Noah before, so I won't dwell on that anymore. Incident response plan and review. This is something we talk about with our peers. Something we talk about internally is, hey, if we do have an incident, how do we respond? Not a true disaster, but the little things every day. Compromised email accounts, right? That phishing email that snuck through. How do we respond to that? We're engaged with any number of resources to walk through tabletop exercises and have those discussions. Engagement with local, state, and federal resources. There is absolutely no shortage of awareness out there of what's going on. We have weekly calls with various, what are the threat vectors, how are people responding, what have you seen, how are you responding to it? We participate actively in those. And then the last point there is really, we're traditionally concerned with things incoming. What about stuff outgoing, right? We send a lot of stuff out to the cloud, and whether it's email, and we also watch that. And so you've got an example there of an alert that one of our systems triggers on, right? So we send about 30,000 emails a day across the county. And there's an example of an individual that sent out a pattern, not necessarily a true Social Security number there, but a pattern that fits it. It alerts us and says, hey, somebody just did this. So we can follow up with them. So we're also watching data going out. All right, I know that was a lot in a short period of time. Jumping ahead here to significant accomplishments, what did we do last year? We did a lot. We can talk a little bit about technology debt there, the first bullet point. Technology debt is really what is the cost of dragging along legacy technology. It's a human cost, it's a capital cost. It prevents us from integrating systems with other systems. It affects IT security. So it is historically very expensive and prevents us from moving. And it's one of the things I'll say that often plagues governments, and we struggle with this across the state at every level of government. But we're pretty much actively working on doing that. So we've got a couple examples there of things we've done. The highlight there is we've rolled out a new intranet on the SharePoint platform. So that's recently this year. It's forward-looking. We're excited about that. Got rid of some old hardware, improved our security posture, all that good stuff. Supporting new county facilities. This is the North County facility, the new Parks building, DPW when they moved into their new building. We always share the enthusiasm across the county that we're doing something new, building a new facility, but we always have moments of panic when it's like, what are we going to connect it to? So, but we're happy to support that. That's one of the more enjoyable things we do is participating in that process. IT security updates, won't spend a lot more time on that, but we have seen measurable risk reduction in our audits, in the way we respond to audits, in the amount of remediation we do. It continually goes down. Multi-factor authentication, identity management, again, talking about behavior-based things. Okta, which I think all of you are enrolled in now as part of coming on board with your laptops. It's that additional level of verification that verifies you are who you think you are, who you say you are. Right, when you log into email, it watches that behavior. Oh, you always log in from that location. Yep, we know that person. Wait a minute, he's in Mexico. I'm going to ask him to authenticate differently or ask him for some additional verification. So turns out you're just on vacation. All right, OnBase, we continue to evolve and mature that platform. We talked about document retention. We've rolled out electronic signatures. We continue to evolve, mature that platform proactively. We have a new phone system. I think you all have your own 632 numbers now. We're excited about that. It's no longer a one-size-fits-all. Our old phone system was 23 years old. This one is cloud-based, so it's 0 years old because it's always changing. But it allows us to engage differently and more individualistic. The way I use my phone is not the way somebody else uses their phone. We can customize it. Lastly, here we relaunched our internship program last year in 2022 and had a great experience with that and look forward to continuing that. All right, so looking ahead here, I know we're well into 2023 already. We're going to continue to improve IT service delivery. Again, it's what we do, it's what our core is. We have to look at how do we better measure ourselves differently. I think the time has come to do that. We're going to continue to eliminate our technology debt. Our motto is really kind of perfection is the enemy of good enough. I think we can analyze things to the point of paralysis and never move forward, but I think when you look at the next bullet point, we've got 40 plus integration projects for various departments we're engaged in. We have to get work off our plate. That's actually a holdover from last year's presentation. But it just shows you that the work flows in, the work flows out, right? But it never lightens up. In fact, it seems to get more and more complex. So we have to find ways to get work off our plates and making it perfect. We just don't have the time. We have to figure out what is good enough and move forward. Proactive business engagement. We talked a little bit about that with OnBase. We're going to continue to evolve and mature that platform. The Microsoft platform is interesting for us, Office 365. Historically, we've used that as email and calendaring, but man, it's an awfully expensive platform just for that. And so really when you look at SharePoint, our new intranet platform, these are development platforms that will support and supplement OnBase. And so it is a viable development platform. Where do we use that to better leverage across the county? Continuous security posture, that will never go away. Interestingly, we are now watching data moving between cloud systems. So where data never crosses county thresholds, it never sits in our data center, but it moves between cloud systems. We are also watching that. And then lastly, but certainly not least, this year we are relocating a data center to better support wherever the county wants to go with its footprint. So acknowledgements, I'm joined here this morning by some of our IT leaders. I've got Mary Beth Van Til, who leads our OnBase and Business Analysis Group. Cynthia Robinson leads our Service Desk area. Matt Mapes is our new Senior IT Business Analyst. Matt came from 63rd District Court. Steve Watson leads our Applications Development Group. And I think that's everybody here this morning, but we've got a great leadership staff. They're dedicated, they're committed, we're creative. It's like herding cats on a daily basis, but it's good herding, let's put it that way. So, and we've got a great staff. We've got a great mix of staff. They're well tenured, well seasoned. They're pros in what they do. It's really, we support 20-some individual businesses every day at the department level, and that's exciting. We're one of the few departments that stitch these things together, and it's part of the great reason we come to work. So we've always been well supported by county leadership, department directors. We're well-resourced. That is not something that every county government can say across the state, so we are blessed to be where we are. I will say that our IT department is watched closely. A lot of people measure themselves against Oakland County, but when you get to the IT technology level, a lot of people associate better with the smaller departments like Kent County. And so phone rings, emails on a daily basis, hey, what is Kent County doing? So we are well-regarded, well-respected, and happy to participate. And then county staff, it's interesting, we rolled out a new phone system, we've got a new intranet, we rolled out multi-factor authentication, and through the whole COVID pivoting, everybody flexible work, now you're back, whatever it might be, flexible work, county staff has really shown an appetite for change. And I think that is exciting because it shows that as it's done correctly, rolled out at the right pace, it's well adopted and makes us successful. So we're excited about that. All right, so that's a little bit about us. I think we try not to take ourselves too seriously, but we take what we do very seriously, and that's a taste of us this morning. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate that. Commissioners, does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Boucher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Tim, your level of confidence and everything that you share with us this morning is amazing. And I think it's reassuring to all of us that are here in this committee to see and to hear what a great job IT is really doing here at the county and how well resourced we are and the depth of the talent that we have and experience. And looking at all these things that you shared is just very, very reassuring, and I appreciate you coming out this morning. And seeing how you responded during COVID and changing the way the workforce looks at, behavioral workplace change, going to working from home. I bet a lot of the employees here are really happy that we've accepted that model, and it's really changing how we think about a space, what the need for space. If we can put 50% of our employees off-site, then, working from home, then maybe we don't need all these buildings. So, I appreciate what you're doing, and kudos to you and your team.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the comments. I'd argue if I could. But as it relates to flexible work, I think it's interesting to watch where the county will go. And certainly when you look at other entities across Michigan or wherever and how they're approaching flexible work, I think it is incumbent upon the county to be competitive with that. And I think you've seen that. Certainly from an IT perspective, we enjoy the challenge of doing something different. And really focusing on more of the end user perspective sometimes, which is really what flexible work is all about. So thank you.
All right. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Pakala.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Beck, thank you for being here this morning. I echo Commissioner Bujak's accolades for the department. I'm curious what sort of innovations are on the horizon that you all are already starting to be prepared for that we should be thinking about for 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that maybe are some sort of seeds that are starting to grow?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. I think one of the areas that we still are watching closely is cloud computing, the Azure cloud-based services. We still operate data centers across the county, and I think while we move more to the cloud, many of our on-premise services are not moved to the cloud, and I think that's one of the areas we are looking at heavily is the numbers don't work just yet, but that equation gets closer and closer all the time, and so what is the right time? And moving a data center like we're doing this year really just further nudges that down the road a little bit. So I think that's one area to watch. The other one that I think is on the horizon is the evolution of IT staff, right? As we look more toward cloud computing, I need more business people than I'm going to need technical people 5-10 years down the road, right? So what does our culture look like? What does our staffing look like in terms of needs? That's going to continually change and evolve, I think, more into the business realm than the technological realm. So you're welcome.
Great. Commissioner Hennessy.
Thank you. This was a fascinating program, and I think I've had more contact with IT in the last year than ever before with the introduction of the laptop computers and the Ring Central, the phone system. And so, we're seeing firsthand what you do, and it's all very good. I was particularly intrigued with your with the range of support you provide to the Sheriff's Department. And then the other, just, through all the video systems and everything else, which is, I thought that was really interesting. The other one was as you talked about incident response plans, there was a section here on the Everbridge mass notification. I was curious as to where you stand on its development.
So Everbridge is a platform by which we can notify everybody across the county, assuming they're enrolled. And it's really, I'll say, a joint implementation between IT supporting the technical back end, the communications folks, HR. And so it's implemented, and it's actually used quite heavily at the Sheriff's Department for various call-outs for some things they do. But it is also used, if you think of the closure that we had last week for non-essential staff, we're just not quite there yet in the development of templates to easily go out and do that. So we have some work to do there, Commissioner, but we're close on that one. But having said that, Everbridge is used selectively across the county for various more granular types of activities. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah. I don't know if it does or not, because, but I did, we certainly did see, an effective use of getting the message out when there were cancellations last week. And, if that's the kind of way in which it's being done, and,
Yeah, I think the use of a platform like Everbridge represents a culture change, because inherent in the business community is email, right? Email is where everybody goes for information, and that is really a historical. It's not unique to government. I think that's just true across business. Email is the first place I go. The use of the Everbridge platforms requires employees to be a little bit more proactive in registering a personal device, a mobile number or something else, so that they can be notified. So there's always a little bit of skepticism, I think, with a platform like Everbridge, that am I actually reaching everybody? We know email is, because we control it end to end. Because if you have an email address, we know we can reach you. Everbridge, I think I'll call it skepticism or confidence in that platform, just isn't there yet countywide. Maybe that answers your question better.
That's good, because
Okay.
it's consistent with what you've said in your report, is that it's something that you're still continuing to
Yes.
refine and develop.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Great. Any other commissioners? Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the file storage where we're reducing use of paper. Our administrator's trying to get us on that path here at the Board of Commissioners. And I'm just wondering what potential you see for that. Do you support the courts with I know that they're thinking about going to all electronic filings and they're not there yet, but for example, where's the greatest potential for, saving those sort of easily wasted resources, like just using tons of paper?
I don't think the greatest potential exists in any one department. I mean, we can all look at major departments like courts, right, and say, well, they're very heavily paper-driven. There's a huge opportunity there. But I look at the opportunity as more as gaining traction by getting everybody to start using it in some fashion. Our Human Resources Department, we're working through a project with them to get them started. But HR also services every other department, right? So if we get them using it, and that comes up in their conversation with other departments, they're more likely to come on board as well. So I think you have to approach opportunity from a couple of different perspectives, and then temper that with the fact that when you look at courts, for example, or prosecutors with case management, what does the future of case management look like, and how does your document management system fit into that? And those are crystal ball we can't yet predict, right? So we have to be very careful about how far down that road we go so we don't paint ourselves in a corner. And I think that goes back to my comment on paralysis by analysis, right? And so it's just an active discussion to say, how far do you want to go with this? Because maybe we can't get you totally paperless, but we can solve a couple of huge pain points, right, to free up staff to do something else. And so I think that's kind of what I touched on a little bit with proactive engagement with these departments. Is let's have that conversation to see where can we get started. So we all know there's the CARC out there, right, that is slowly collapsing under the weight of paper and things like that. But we've had huge wins in prosecutor's office. We're seeing it in HR. We've had huge wins at the drains office and things like that historically. But we don't want to just rest on that. But I think we have to be a little bit more targeted in some ways in how we approach that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much.
Great. Any other commissioners? Well, Tim, I'd like to thank you and your staff for someone that just wants technology to work when I want it to work, and I don't want to think about the details like you and your staff do. I'd like to thank you for that, and can thank you for being there when we need you, and to fix our mess-ups and our screw-ups when they happen. And, yeah, trying to get to this paperless. I love my Surface. There's something about still a pen in my hand, being able to write on things that's hard for me to let go. So trying to adapt, and again, appreciate your willingness in doing so. So
Good.
again, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. All right, we have our Administrator's Office Board of Commission Performance Measurement Review. County Administrator Al Vandenberg, the shot clock's on at 5 minutes.
I can do that.
Sure.
I'll use radioactive dating time or something to hit that 5 minutes. Unfortunately, but, okay, well, good morning. And I'm very pleased to be with you standing here at the podium to talk about the performance measurements for the Administrator's Office. And I will attempt to demonstrate the County Administrator's alignment with the board priorities and goals under the strategic plan. So we're going to really look at 6 areas. So alignment with board priorities, department strategic goals, Kent County strategic plan key performance metrics, Kent County department key performance metrics, some of the significant accomplishments, and a look ahead. Okay, so this just, I think you've seen all this in the orientation, but our main roles are we recommend actions, we implement board policy, we work on the budget, we develop procedures, recommend policies, provide legal counsel, conduct program, departmental, and management analyses. We communicate with internal and external stakeholders. We help coordinate the board's legislative agenda and provide general administrative support. So the department's strategic goals are a pathway to fulfill Kent County's strategic plan, and the Administrator's Office supports the county's strategic plan in the following ways. We communicate consistently with internal stakeholders to increase awareness and understanding of the county's operations and programs, services, and their value, and we encourage and foster strategic public-private, intergovernmental, and yeah. I was on a roll, too. So, okay, there we go. Ah, geez, I'm sorry. Somehow do I have a mouse? I need a mouse or something to move this thing. When my motes. What's that? All right, okay. So I'm going to jump to, these are the key metrics that we captured by staff that support the board. We're trending well in citizen board applications, timely posting of agendas, and minutes for standing committees and subcommittees. We received 152, actually, applications for 42 vacancies in 2021, and we went up to well over 500 last year. Now, I need to explain that we're big on process improvement. So we're starting to implement Toyota Catalina, which came from where you might suspect, the Toyota, the automotive manufacturer, who got it from W. Edwards Deming, who is the American professor who was really the father of the quality movement. And basically, we're looking at processes for improvement. And so this is one where we're actually able to go from 150 to over 500 citizen applications for boards that you oversee, simply by taking the time to really look at the processes and where were some of the efficiencies and where could we improve some of those things. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. Sometimes process improvement will take the form of cash savings. More often it will take the form of efficiency savings, so that we can technically do more with less or more with the same by becoming better at how we're doing things. I think that's a really fertile ground in government because we have a limited amount of taxpayer dollars. And if we can be better accountable and use them better and better, we can, we can ask for less new resources if we can use the ones we have better on a continual basis. All right. So communication is an area that we focus on. Communication is an area that we can never do good enough or well enough, and we try to make improvement, and we welcome your comments and suggestions on how we can communicate better. In our office, we had 189 email newsletter releases sent out. We had a 72% engagement rate with what we sent out, which I believe is pretty good. We had 1,600 social media posts across all of our channels and all of our departments, or at least the county proper, the health department, and community action. Other areas do their own social media. We had 15.8 million impressions, so the number of times our content showed up in our audience's feeds. And we had 3,500 new followers in 2022. So more than 459,000 engagements in 2022, and engagements are the number of times our audience interacted with the content that we put out. It's important to note that there are a few anomalies, like 2020, when general fund public safety costs were shifted to the Coronavirus Relief Fund, in 2023, which is a 9-month budget. So that's going to throw off some of the performance or money metrics that you see during some of the PM presentations for this year. However, this number includes net transfers out. However, going forward, administration will revise this calculation formula to remove the transfers out, so you kind of see the true net on this slide. So this will be reflected in next year's PM presentation, and we'll back calculate that so it includes 2021 through 2023 as well. So Jeff Dode, Pete McGregor, and I did represent the county in our annual credit rating meetings with Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and we were successful in maintaining the AAA credit ratings that the county has historically held from both of those, and they are the top 2 rating agencies. We did move forward. The board did approve an inclusion strategic plan and hired a company to help put that together. And it basically includes organizational values, policy development, planning and monitoring, communications and engagement, staff development, organizational resourcing, and procurement and contracting. Some of the key performance metrics for our Corporation Counsel's office. So the FOIA submittal numbers continue to burgeon, I would say. We had 8,297 in 2022, and processed and fulfilled were 5,905. The total fees reimbursed under state law for FOIA submitted countywide was over $85,000, almost $86,000. Sheriff's Department alone, the total FOIA fees reimbursed were over $57,000. And for the Health Department, over $24,000, almost $25,000. So as you can see, those are the 2 largest areas that people submit FOIAs for, are Sheriff and Health. 99% of the FOIAs were responded within 5 days. 99% of the responsive records were furnished within the statutory time frame. We did not have any lawsuits challenging a FOIA denial or for excessive fees. We had 7 administrative appeals out of 8297 requests, which were submitted to the board chair per policy. Redactions, exemptions, and denials were claimed on 2280 FOIA requests. Indigent Counsel. So this is the first year of several of these initiatives. Some of you will recall that back in 2012, the state created the MIDC and created a different process for how indigent counsel works. They basically wanted it separated from the court system. Here we already had it in a nonprofit, and it's overseen by our Corporation Counsel office. And the state has been implementing through the state MIDC board the ABA standards. And so there's different standards that they implement in different years. Thanks to the advocacy of several counties in West Michigan and across the state, we went from the initial position in that law that was proposed in 2012, well, proposed in 2011 and voted on in 2012, that would have required counties to send a lot of money to the state and then have the state decide who the indigent counsel would be in cases in our counties. We were at least able to maintain that authority within the county structure and also the state is required to pay for anything that's mandated through that process. And then there is, basically the amount that counties paid in 2012 was set on a 3-year rolling average, and later legislation allowed the state to collect a 4% increase on that amount. But basically, the state pays almost all of the cost of new positions, new cost, even down to certain equipment and that sort of thing, facilities in some cases, not in our case yet. So we had 3,286 new felony appointments that were split between the nonprofit county defender, Office of the Defender, and a roster of approximately 50 private bar attorneys. The Indigent Defense Administration Office added a full-time attorney in November of 2022 and will request an additional 1.5 full-time equated positions to handle increased workloads as MIDC standards continue to be implemented. Again, those positions are paid for by the state through the MIDC. A study by the National Association for Public Defense has been commissioned to review how Kent County delivers indigent defense services and make recommendations based on best practices, and that will span most of this year. So it'll start in the second quarter, should be completed by the fourth quarter of this year. So one of the major things I took on as your new administrator about 1.5 years ago was to restock and reorganize the county administrator's office. That was about a 14 to 15 month process, and I am excited by the team that we've been able to put together. And I think we're engaging, and we'll get a lot of great things done along with the board and for the board. And then also another, I think, major thing we took on, I don't think any of us knew how major it was until we got kind of into the middle of it, but the American Rescue Plan Act community engagement process was an enormous undertaking. We did survive, we're still standing, and I think there's been a lot of valuable investment that's been made both in county operations and also in our community. The 2023 budget, again, reset the county's fiscal year to gain internal efficiencies, and I would also argue external transparency, because what a lot of people don't see behind the scenes is that we're really doing 2 budgets and 2 audits, because most of our bigger federal money is on the October 1 fiscal year, some of the state, some of our big departments, health, courts, that type of thing. But then also I think it's cleaner when we present it to the public if it's all on the same fiscal year. And so I think by going to October 1, it'll also have public benefit as well as internal efficiencies. We had senior and veteran millage renewed, so voters did vote to continue millage supported services for our Kent County seniors and veterans, following the board approval to include these on the August 22 primary. Both went through nicely. We also took on organization of the animal control and shelter, shifted the animal control function to the sheriff's office and the animal shelter as a separate department to enhance the services provided, which reports up through the county administrator's office now and not through public health. Also, we convened the Sustainable Business Park Stakeholder Advisory Group. You'll have work sessions on this in the near future, but basically this is a massive undertaking to take about 44% of our waste stream and put it out there to productive use. So to take the normal 3-legged stool of bury, burn, and recycle and maybe make it into a 4-legged table and add commercialization to that, to try to take waste out of landfills and put it into productive use. It's a very complex project. We've been meeting mostly every other week, sometimes once in a month, since about April of last year with a group of stakeholders to try to get our arms around that very complex project. And I think we're making some real progress with that as well. Grand River Voices for All. So as part of the overall Greenway project, we are engaged with the city of Grand Rapids to make sure that whatever happens with the Greenway in the future creates spaces that are accessible to all peoples, and also may have the river even come alive as a place for development, access to opportunity. But again, with the sensitivity to make sure that it becomes an asset for all to enjoy. Welcome Plan, we engaged nearly 60 organizations in forming 7 priority work groups to begin implementing recommendations in the plan. And again, this is a role the county took on in partnership with the City of Grand Rapids and a number of nonprofits as a way to better welcome and assimilate immigrants into our Kent County community, as we are seeing significant growth in those populations. Board of Commissioners legislative priorities, successes. One of the things we really focused on, it's been a real focus of our board chair, Stan Steck, is to find a way to not send people who are having mental health crises to either the jail or to the emergency rooms, but to have a place 24/7 where people can go regardless of their status of their insurance. And so we're close. I think that probably we're looking at maybe February of 2024 before that's completely done. But work has begun, the design has begun, and I think that we'll see steady progress through this year. But we're able to access $4 million to help that stack as far as meet the project cost for that endeavor. Look ahead, branding campaign. This was an intense process. It took 3 years. It was interrupted by the pandemic. The communications team sent out a survey in late 2021 that generated more than 6,000 responses. Now, so why is that significant? You might say, we have 670-some thousand people, so big deal, 6,000 people respond. When I was here the first time, I learned a lot about surveying because Kent County did a lot of surveying with Epic MRA out of Lansing. And what I learned at the time, we had about 600,000 people, and that it took a 300 to 400 size sample if it was randomly applied to get a scientifically accurate result of plus or minus 4.5%. And so 6,000 is really overwhelming then, if you look at what it really takes to get a scientifically accurate result. So this surveying was good, and a couple of the other things that shook out of the surveying was that something like 83% of Kent County residents thought the county was doing a great job, even during some of the worst times we had with the pandemic and other major issues landing in our laps. And so I think the brand has been very well received. Obviously, this is the kind of thing you hold your breath. Kind of feels like jumping off a cliff and hoping there's water and not rocks below when you launch a new brand. And I just wanted to relate that recently I was in Washington, D.C. for the National Association of Counties legislative conference, and there were quite a few times when I handed my card to someone, I didn't tell them, oh, we went through a branding campaign. I just handed it to them, and they were kind of did a double take and said, wow, I really like that. That's a great design. So anyways, we're getting good response, and I think it's going to be a successful way to connect better with our people. Your place, your partner, that's getting a good response as well. So budgeting and finance, so obviously, everybody knew what was happening every day, every minute, because everything went online with the whole engagement process for ARPA, but now the work of vetting projects, negotiating contracts, getting things underway has begun. And, we're very close to signing a number of contracts with different projects. We have an RFP out for architectural services for the medical examiner facility. So we are making steady progress with the ARPA work, and I think as some of these contracts become activated, you'll see more publicity about some of these, some of the various valuable projects that the board has invested in. Kent County Parks, so we're working on hiring a parks director. We have a committee that's going to start work soon. Commissioner Teal is chairing that will look at does it make sense to have a Parks Commission as a kind of a partner with the board and the Parks Foundation as we look to make the parks the very best we can. We're taking another look at Cannonsburg, looking at buying maybe the couple hundred acres around the ski hill and to preserve that for public use into the future. And then also the Greenway project, well, you'll be having it's either a work session or study sessions with kind of the group that's working on the Grand River Greenway. But the Grand River Greenway, within the next few years, will be completed from Lake Michigan to the Kent-Ottawa border. There's a 120-mile trail coming the other way that's at the Ionia-Kent border. So right now, we're kind of the gap that would prevent somebody from doing almost 200 miles of non-motorized transportation, and we're hard at work with a number of community partners. The board put 10 million of ARPA money into the Greenway and another 5 into various parks, a couple of which kind of hook to or benefit with the Greenway. And so I think that's going to be simply an amazing facility when you consider there will be water trails with it, when you consider there will be different cultural and historical things brought out over time with the Greenway. And then internally, we've been moving forward with our Disney Way customer service training and the other 6 C's strategies like Robertson Brain Health and some of the other things. These initiatives have been received very well by the staff who have participated, and we look forward to taking a big dent, training most of our people with customer service this year. Some may bleed into next year, but I think we'll get a lot of that done. Sustainable Business Park, this year the advisory group will complete its work, and we expect, DPW, they're engaged with some preliminary engineering, and we think that their group, probably late spring, early summer, will see a proposal from Dar and his team on the Sustainable Business Park. It would involve the county board considering a bond. I think the total price of the park, the last I heard, was $380 million, and the county was still maybe going to be requested for $70 million. Again, those are numbers that are a little dated, but they appear, at least at this point in time, to still be good. Then I would think that sometime early, middle, late summer, this would be something that the board would need to take up and vote on. This year, we will also complete the inclusion strategic plan and go through that with the board as well. Legislative priorities, we're right in the heat of developing those. Those will come to LHR and then also to the Board of Commissioners for consideration and approval, but that kind of is our guide for things come up, obviously, regardless of the budget or plan. But certainly it's the overriding guide for as we approach our state and federal elected and appointed officials to move county initiatives forward. It's an invaluable tool for that. So I could talk all day, but Dan only gave me 5 minutes. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Oh. So he wants me to learn to stick a landing like this man over here, I can tell. But I mean, even the Russian judge would give him a 10. So.
Well, thank you, Al. I appreciate that. Commissioners, Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was curious about the FOIAs. When the bottom line, it said 2,280 were either redacted or something along that line. And what's the cause for that? Is it something we just can't fulfill because we don't have the data, or is it?
I'm going to give you the quick answer, and then I'll turn it over to Linda. But many times we don't have what someone's requesting. And so if we don't have a document or the information they're requesting, we have nothing to give them. Linda?
When it comes to redactions, we redact things like social security numbers or personal information. Sometimes a document might have medical information in it if it's coming out of the health department. It might concern minors if it's coming out of the sheriff's department. So there are very specific things that are allowed by statute to be redacted to protect that privacy. The other thing we would redact is if somebody wanted all the security plans for the jail. We're not sending that out, and we don't have to. We don't send out software code. So there are very specific things in the statute that we can and do redact for those purposes.
And we had 2,280 requests that, like, we had to redact. Are people asking for all of this? I mean, this seems like information that we shouldn't even get requests for, right?
Well, think about it this way. A redaction doesn't mean we don't give out the entire document. It means that we black out that social security number. So in a traffic accident report, you might have some personal identifiable information. And so we redact only those portions, and we give out the rest of the document. That's one reason why it's such a time-intensive process.
Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioners? Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. I've got another question on the FOIA, just in the difference between the numbers that are of submitted requests and then the numbers that are fulfilled, because there's a big difference there. Is that also we don't have the information, or are some of the requests not legitimate, or what's the difference?
All of the above. We may not have a responsive document. When somebody sends in a FOIA, they have to tell us under statute, they're obligated to give us their contact information. So if we get an anonymous FOIA, we will reach out and tell them, we need your information so we know where to send it. A lot of times they don't respond. They'll just drop it. Or the other option is they request what would turn into a semi-truck full of documents without realizing it. And then we'll reach out and go, do you really want this? And they'll say no. So it's a combination of a lot of different factors. But a lot of times, too, somebody will send something to the county that belongs to the city or the state or something like that. So we'll redirect them to the actual place where they can get the information they're looking for.
So that's all included in that number? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, I'm just interested in the performance review timeline. So how does the process work, and are we looking at what you did last year? Are we looking for what you're going to be doing in the coming year? And what does this current board do with this?
So the measures are from last year, and
Okay.
then there's a few items where we look ahead. This isn't everything we're working on as we look ahead, or we'd be here a lot longer. So just some of the highlights, I think. But I think for the board, it's a matter of accountability, so you know what we're working on, how we're working on it. Are there things you think we should do differently? Let me know, that type of thing. I think we may see a change in this as the board rules come up for approval. I was part of, when I was here the first time, taking a performance measurement system that wasn't performing very well. And at the time, the board mandated that every area of the county would do it as a requirement during the budget process, because some were doing it and some weren't doing it. We brought in an author who trained all of our departmental leaders. Well, actually, I ended up doing a lot of the training, but we used that resource to train department heads and deputy department heads, other key staff, on a common language for what's vision, mission, values, overarching goals, performance measurements, and so we could all get on the same page. And then what we would do is actually have these put in a book and submitted basically early on in the budget process, so the folks putting the budget together would have that. That part isn't there right now, and I think it's because we went to a different computer system at some point and it became very problematic. One of my goals would be to produce that book again so that we have that in front of us during the budget development process.
Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Al, early in your presentation, you had mentioned something about measurement of Kent County social media. What is Kent County social media? Do we have a Facebook site, or what is that?
I think that's the one that gets the most attention, but Lori would be. Talk about our social media.
Good morning. When we talk about the Kent County social media sites, we have Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the main county. And then when you go down to the individual departments, the health department has Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Community Action has Facebook and Twitter. So there's a variation in each of our departments. And you guys will actually, this is pretty timing, in the next month or so, be seeing our new social media policy, and you'll be able to see all the channels that we currently have and which ones we're going to restrict going forward.
As you can see no TikTok yet, so none of this yet. So, any other questions?
All right.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no one, Al, thank you very much. Great report. I'll wait for you to get back to your chair, and we'll go to the administrator's office. I'm sorry, Department of Public Works, Eagle MMCE grant support for Kent County. I will give Al a couple seconds, longer than I gave him for his presentation. And then Dar will be able to
I didn't even
address
come
the
close,
board.
did I? All right. Okay, action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve the West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum as a designated planning agency for Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy Materials Management County Engagement Grant. Summary. The Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy is incentivizing counties to educate stakeholders on forthcoming opportunities and potential requirements to adopt sustainable materials management as a modern alternative to solid waste management. The Eagle Materials Management County Engagement Grant seeks to create partnerships within regions and counties, understand current materials management gaps and challenges, highlight future changes to the planning process, and outline steps that can occur at the county and regional level to assist with the development of future materials management programs and infrastructure. A $12,000 grant will support outreach to public and private stakeholders, research of current practices in Kent County and Western Michigan, educational events, and collaboration with other communities in the region. West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum will execute this grant for the county. Engagement activities will dovetail with a future materials management planning process that is anticipated to start in fiscal year 2024 when initiated by the Eagle Director to update county solid waste management plans and transition to materials management plans to reflect changes in Public Act 451, Part 115 Solid Waste Management Statute passed by the legislature in December 2022.
All right, can I have a motion and support, please? So moved by Pakla, LeGrand with support. Dar, if anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask.
Carol has a question.
I'm sorry, Carol. Commissioner Hennessy.
Well, given that Jar is up here, I would like to, ask him to talk about this a little bit more. $12,000 isn't a lot. What are we going to do with this? And I also found that, like, this was lingo that I didn't completely understand. So we're talking about future materials management programs and infrastructure. Maybe you can explain that to me.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'd be happy to, and my apologies to Al. I think I wrote that action request. The reality is, with the changes in the modernization of state statute, they're moving from solid waste management planning, which really focuses on disposal at a landfill, to reuse. So the new lingo is materials management, because you're not looking at it as solid waste or trash. You're looking at it as a resource or as a feedstock. And you're right, that's not a lot of money. What we're doing is really pooling the funds from Kent County along with other counties in the region. So it'd be like Ottawa, Muskegon, Montcalm, Newaygo. We serve as a hub and spoke, particularly with our recycling facility. Our material recovery facility serves the needs of about 8 counties, including Kent County today. So, for example, recycling that's delivered to our facility on Wealthy Street may come from Newaygo or Montcalm or Muskegon or Ottawa County, et cetera. So this is really pre-planning. This takes funds that the Kent County would have access to, and it pools it with the same amount of money coming from these other counties to level set and just kind of get in the same room to talk through what do we think our regional future looks like in advance of this larger planning announcement that we expect to occur next year. So this is a pre-plan, lots of new lingo and jargon, but it's really an opportunity for those of us that are in this area of the business to talk through what we have in our county, what we'd like to have in our county, how does it align with other counties. For example, last week I was invited to speak to the Ottawa County Solid Waste Planning Committee and talk through some things they're working on, as well as things that we're working on, and where might we connect. So Not a lot of money. It's pooled resources. It allows the business forum to facilitate on our behalf. And we think that's a good way to approach it. And it allows industry and others to sit down and to have these conversations.
All right. Anyone else? Commissioner DeBoer?
The $12,000, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the $12,000 coming from our general fund?
No, this is actually a grant from Eagle. It's a
Oh, this is from
pre-planning grant.
Eagle.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And with zero match, so the county's not matching any funds.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If there's no other commissioner questions, this is just a voice vote. So all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? That will move to the board meeting on March the 9th. All right. Commissioners, any miscellaneous? Commissioner Hennessy.
Thank you. I'd like just to ask, we were told, we're developing our legislative priorities, and I'd like to know, how we're approaching that and, what kind of a timeline. So I'll ask that of you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I will have to defer this to staff. I know we are working on several different things, and the legislative priorities will begin when? Mr. Vandenberg?
Very soon. I mean, we have a draft done, but Lori, why don't you talk us through this? This is an area that Lori heads up for us, so.
So the way our process normally works with the legislative priorities, we do ask all the department directors kind of what are their key issues. So we've assembled those. We also looked at kind of some of the state priorities. We also look at MAC and try to come into a joint set of priorities. We have those completed, and we just need to get with the chair and then Board Chair Stan Steck to ask if you want to do the work session here at LHR or if you want to do it a full board work session like we've done in the past, and then we will get that scheduled to get moving sooner rather than later on those priorities. So right now it's just a determination as to where that work session is going to be held to review them.
Will there be an allowance for input from this board?
Absolutely, yeah.
Before we get to, this is the presentation you're being given?
Yes, we'll send those out to you well in advance of the work session so that you can review and ask any questions, or if there's anything that we're missing, we're happy to take that input before we get to the work session.
One I'm, curious about whether we'll be putting in is with our ARPA priorities, where we're giving so much priority and funding to the affordable housing, if that and getting that help to fund it and that matching funds that we're anticipating, if that's going to be a part of what you do plan for legislative priorities.
We have been talking to legislators. The challenge is kind of what is happening at the state level right now is that there has been one supplemental that's been completed, and they're working on a second supplemental now, and then they also have the budget going at the same time. So through those different supplementals and the budget process, we have already started those conversations with legislators to see if we can get any funding into a housing bucket that would maybe expand either currently what we've done or reach another sector of the population. I think the challenge right now is that all the funding that has been happening at the state level has been going to MSHDA, which kind of restricts what we can do with that, but we're going to keep pushing that issue with our legislators. But yes, housing is definitely included in the legislative priorities.
If I could add one thing on the housing, I think that, just to remind everyone, with the CDFI, the $17.5 million that gets matched up to about $75.5 million, and we hope to match that through community. That's only for loans. The hope was that we could get some money for grants through the state. And since we had that conversation last, I see that the city of Grand Rapids has started accepting proposals for the $5.5 million that they have, and that would be targeted for grants. So I just wanted to mention that.
As the state, operates on a different budget, year than what we have in the past, and you're talking to supplementals, how much urgency is there to our developing this legislative priorities, especially when we're working with the state right now?
There is urgency. I think what our challenge has been is that we've been trying to address the urgency of the supplemental, so it's been hard to kind of get through the normal budget process because we get, oh my gosh, we're doing a supplemental to try to save, the first supplemental was the paper plant up in the UP, so we tried to work in some kind of priorities for that. Then we're like, okay, we're coming back to the normal budget process, and they're like, no, we're working on a supplemental for the Ford factory in Marshall. So we're like, okay, we're focusing on this is what you want to include in the supplemental, and now we're kind of swinging back. So this is not a normal process, what is happening right now in the state legislature. Things are not going through the normal committee process, so we're just, like with everybody, we're just kind of going with the flow and kind of working with the majority and trying to address when they say, these are the issues that we want in the supplemental. We're saying, okay, here's some priorities that we know that the board has supported in the past, there's been a priority for us, and see if we can work in it. So it's a little chaotic this year compared to years past, but we're trying to be flexible.
Thank you. I do
Yep.
appreciate this extended explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Commissioner Hennessy. Any other questions? Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, I hope this is the right place for this. Just a question of inquiry. The New York Times this weekend had an article about children labor in an area that were immigrants, and I wonder, are there county systems that overlap with the engagement with those children or impact them in any way?
The primary intersection would be with our health department, and I know that when that story came out with the New York Times over the weekend, the Welcome Plan and several community leaders, about 30, got on a phone call yesterday. The county was participating in that, as well as like Bethany and Samaritas, to see what, if anything, our systems need to do to try to protect that situation. So right now, I would say everybody's kind of in the investigative piece of this to see, you know, what role that we need to play in that. But yes, the Welcome Plan is kind of, that team is taking the lead on this.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no other miscellaneous, we will adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting is March 14th, 2023 at 8:30 a.m. We need about 8 minutes for our budget boot camp. So those who want to stick around, they can do so.